Every offseason on Mark Rogers TV, we compare the conferences. So for the last few off seasons, you've seen us look at the results of the games between the Power 5 conferences, and we'll do that in a few weeks. That's an objective analysis. We take all the results between Power 5 conferences and we smash them all together based on seeding, based on performance, and give you the winner or the conference that played the best over the course of the previous season. This is totally subjective, but it's fun, and it's my take on what would happen if these two teams played 10 times. So I'm taking the entirety of the ACC, all 14 teams, but we had to subtract 2, of course, so to match up with the Pac-12. So 12 teams in the Pac-12, 14 in the ACC. So I try to balance it out by taking out a fair amount in terms of fair seeding. So we've got the top 4 in the ACC, then we take out North Carolina, then we go with the next 4, then we take out Wake Forest, then we go with the final 4 in the ACC. So we've got the bottom and the top, and then we take 2 out in the middle from the ACC to take on the 12 from the Pac-12. Just a few years ago, the Pac-12 was vying for top position in the nation, challenging the SEC, but the ACC, after coming through a 9-3 postseason, including the national championship, and 10 of 14 overall against the SEC, wow, the ACC looks mighty impressive, and not just Clemson and Florida State, as the conference has been over the last many years. A lot of other fine teams, top 25 caliber teams in the ACC. All right, if they play 10 times, because I wanted to go to a 10-game season or a 10-game comparison, or at least thought process, let's call it that, because obviously if take a number of these selections here, if they played once, it would be very difficult to choose who would win that one game and where would they play that one game. Well, if they're going to play 10 times, then you can get a feel for, oh, I slightly like this team over the other. Let's go 6-4. All right, this is what we've got. Clemson, arguably the best team in the country, certainly earned the national championship, taking on Washington. They win that game 7 of 10 times, in my estimation. Need to hear from you, of course. Louisville, Colorado, despite the way the Cardinals finished, and we're taking these teams theoretically as fully healthy and at the end of the season. Cardinals beat the Buffs here 6 out of 10 times. The Buffs looked pretty awful at the end of the season against the better competition in Washington and Oklahoma State. Virginia Tech, USC. Virginia Tech looking very strong down the stretch. Took Clemson to a one-score game. I think it finished out by an 11-point loss in the ACC championship game, but played very well, especially in the comeback in the second half against Arkansas in the Belk Bowl. But USC, just superior. Would be a decent matchup, though, 7-3. Would love to see, actually, Florida State take on USC. So why didn't we match up the Seminoles and the Trojans? That's because we're going by seeding. We're not going based on my rankings of the teams within the conferences. I would have had Florida State as the second best team in the ACC, but they didn't play. They didn't earn second seed status in the ACC. I went by conference record, then head-to-head, if that comes into play between those two teams, and then overall record. All right, Florida State's in the 4th spot taking on Washington State. I think the Seminoles easily win this 8 out of 10 times. All right, Miami-Stanford, really good matchup, very interesting. Of course, we saw North Carolina, who doesn't make the tournament this time around, taking on Stanford in the Sun Bowl, and that game came down to the last play. And much would be the same here. I do like Stanford at full strength against Miami, 6-4. Pitt and Utah, a very comparable game there. Utah did not look impressive against Indiana. Missed field goal, basically handed them the win. Pitt, of course, had the capability of defeating Clemson and Penn State. No, the Panthers don't play like that on a regular basis, but they would in this series a handful of times and win it 6-4. Georgia Tech, Oregon State. Oregon State was the surprise in terms of seedings in the Pac-12. They are not as good as a handful of teams below them, but that's the way the seedings play out. Georgia Tech, one of the weaker 9-4, maybe the weakest 9-4 Power 5 team in the country, still defeats Oregon State 7-3. North Carolina State and Cal. Cal did not reach postseason play. North Carolina State had one of its typical fairly weak non-conference schedules despite the date against Notre Dame. They made its way through that. They won all the non-conference games. looked pretty bad in conference, had to defeat an upset North Carolina just to get to bowl play, then looked impressive. So we take the NC State team at the end of 2016 to win 6 of 10 games against Cal. Syracuse, yes, they're higher seeded than Boston College despite the worse overall record and not getting to postseason play, and Boston College winning a bowl game over Maryland. But Syracuse had the same conference record, and they beat Boston College head-to-head. That was the second tiebreaker. So Syracuse gets that spot against Oregon. We still believe the Ducks' talent is better than Syracuse, despite, of course, Oregon coming down to earth, crashing down to earth this season after all those successful years under Chip Kelly and Mark Helfrich. The Ducks do defeat the Cuse 6-4. Boston College, Arizona State. We believe that Boston College splits with ASU. ASU losing the last game of the season to miss postseason play. Virginia, UCLA. UCLA, the most talented, lowest seeded team that we're going to see in this tournament as we match up any of the conferences, I believe. UCLA defeats Virginia 7-3 just because the Bruins would screw it up a few times, but much better than Virginia. Duke and Arizona, I see that as a toss-up across the board, and so we go 5-5. So the two schools, or the two conferences, play 120 games, and the ACC is a slight advantage there, winning 64-56. In terms of the series record, if you look at it here, it's 6 for the ACC, 4 for the Pac-12, and 2 finished at 5-5. That's our matchup thought in regards to how we would see these matchups play out over the course of, again, 10 games, not trying to figure out who would win a one-game series, a one-game matchup, but pin these teams against each other 10 times, and that's how we see it. Would love to hear from you. Get your thoughts on where we missed it right here on Mark Rogers TV.